Hello and welcome to yet another video, and in this video I'll be talking about something that's different than what I usually talk about here on my YouTube channel, but I still feel like sharing it because it is still about photography and it's pretty much my experience using this waterproof pack or waterproof housing right here. It's the Dicapac or Dicapac WP-S10. There are different varieties of this bag depending on your model size and what you need, your lens size and everything. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into the video. So I actually have this waterproof pack or waterproof housing for almost a year now actually. Before buying this, I was very skeptical about buying this because there were so many reviews out there, regardless of models you go for, bigger or smaller models. There were people having, trouble like their camera being broken because there were some leakage, or some people really were successful with getting their music video shoots done or doing really nice underwater photo shoots with this thing. So there were really like 50% opinion on the success stories and also the not so success stories. So yeah, but at the end of the day I decided to buy it anyway because it was like, what, 60 euros or 70 euros at the time when I bought it. I'm sure the price fluctuates from, increase and decrease a little bit over time depending on the time of the year you buy it from. But yeah, I didn't really feel like spending money like on a proper housing where you can comfortably control all the dials, buttons and everything, because they cost somewhere between 3 grand to like 6 grand depending on the model you go for. And I was looking like for the housing for my EOS R, and also if possible other cameras that I could fit, like my 5D line of cameras. I don't want to have like one waterproof housing just for one specific model of cameras. So that's kind of like a bad investment in my opinion, because considering what I do, which is like weddings, events, portraits, landscape, travel, actually a lot, that doesn't require to be underwater that much. It didn't really make any sense to invest something that's specifically for one model of camera, and maybe I would upgrade that body like in the next 2 years or something. So it's just not a good investment for me, and that's why I decided to really test this and also put it through its paces, both in like professional work, like paid environment, and also in my personal work as well. And in this video I'll be sharing with you my experience using this, the pros, the cons, and I hope this video will help some of you out if you're really looking to getting this waterproof pack or waterproof housing, however you want to call it. So to access this bag, there are 2 ways that I see on the internet, but I mainly only use one way. So first you have to put your camera in here, and then you have to unscrew this cover. But what I typically do is I would just take off the battery grip on my EOS R, because I mainly use this camera to shoot underwater with, because, well, it has dual pixel AF and it is small and light enough. Oh, before I put this camera in, they usually ship with 3 or 4 of these foams that you put on the base, and that is pretty much to adjust the level of your camera inside. I think I took 2 out and there are 2 in here just to like support the base. And I usually use this 16 to 35 millimeter f4 lens here. It zooms within the barrel. So before purchasing this bag, I saw one like photographer who uses the 16 to 35. It's from a different brand, but it zooms like externally. So he was able to actually get his lens pushed down every time he would try to swim with it, and it would mess up his focal length. So I personally didn't experience that, and I think if you're using the lens that zooms in internally, then you're not going to be really affected by the pressure of this moving up and down, and it's going to affect your focal length. So I didn't really have any of those problems or issues. And if I just set it to any of the focal length, which you can through this thumb or finger like glove like slots, then yeah, you can just keep your focal length as it is if your lens zooms internally. And there are actually different stages of sealing this pack or housing or bag. Oh, by the way, they also give you the strap which you can actually release and clip on really quickly. I found the straps to be really useful when shooting underwater because I don't want to lose my camera. But it's, on the other hand, it's also hard to lose the camera because another way you know that your housing is nice and tight inside is when you seal it and you put in water, it actually floats because there are still some trapped air inside. So in order to make me being able to like submerge really successfully, or as smooth as possible, rather, I need to take out all the air as much as I can right there. So there are these like Ziploc-like zippers, just like clip it. It's really tough. You really have to make sure that this part is completely sealed. So really go over it many times and really have a look that it's really sealed. And then you would roll this down, and there's the first level of Velcro that you seal the rolling with the Velcro here, and also you use the flap to seal it the second time. So there are actually 3 layers of protection. And even though I try to get the air out, there are still some air inside. There is still some air inside, and you definitely can feel that. And if you now, you know, before you completely submerge everything, just put it on water, it will float. Like my EOS R in this housing or this pack actually floats on water, even though I tried my best to get all the air out. And that's already a good sign. And then just, you know, play around with it for the next few minutes and see that there are actually no water actually getting in. Because, you know, not only that, even if you seal this, sometimes if you have this for a long time, these joints would get old and, you know, break somehow, and water could just slip in because there are a lot of joints, you know. So it's best to really just test it for a few minutes, and once you're sure that everything is weather sealed, well, not weather sealed, but everything is completely sealed, then yeah, feel free to use it. I also recommend using a wide angle or a lens that is big enough for the front element here, simply because if you don't have a lens that really is big or really is close to this diameter here, you will get some sort of really harsh vignetting in your image, and you would end up really cropping a lot, and it's kind of like a waste of resolution to do that, even though you can. That being said, even with this big lens, being an ultra-wide angle, sometimes I do naturally get this circular or just parts of these circles into the images, but because it's pretty much almost touching this front part, it's also very easy to just crop in a little bit, and I'm not really ruining most of the framing. And otherwise, it's pretty nice. So let me first start with the con of this pack. The con is it's really hard to control, and I think you can actually see that it's like you can't really see your focal length that much and everything. And if you're just looking from the back here, it seems like you can actually see it really well here, but once you're actually in water or you're actually shooting whether like slightly above the water or in water, it's just become really hard to see the screen, to be honest with you. That being said, it also depends on like the water you're in and also the lighting in the water itself, but in most cases, whether it's like daylight or sun's down or during the sunset or things like that, it's really hard to look. And if you have a touch screen, your touch screen becomes pretty much almost useless underwater, or when this part is wet and it touches your touchscreen, it will also tap on the touchscreen itself and without you registering that tap. So yeah, if you have everything dialed in properly, I really recommend that. Dial everything in properly before fully submerge and start shooting, because things can change, like settings, if you have a touchscreen that is, things can change on the touchscreen because of the different tapping with this surface. But otherwise, even though it's an inconvenience about like moving certain dials, certain buttons, if you know your camera well, you will be able to move the dials and the buttons very well. Like I had almost no problem adjusting the dial here because, you know, the surface back here is pretty big, but sometimes it does get stuck a little bit and you really have to force it a little bit. And sometimes when you try to press certain buttons or turn certain dials when you're submerged underwater, or try to use this water housing when it's completely wet, you sometimes don't really feel a confirmation, you know, a tactile confirmation from the buttons or from the dials that it's really turned or it's adjusted, things like that. So sometimes you really have to look, and not being able to see that screen that well is actually kind of a problem, because you know, like, you're trying to change the settings. Sometimes it's really crucial. You want to change the exposure a little bit, and you can't really see that much of a difference through the screen, and you're not really sure. So that's really a downside, is that this plastic thing is just, it's nice to have, but in the same time it's also kind of useless. So what I learned is, if your shoot is very time sensitive, whether you're paying a lot for the model and or you're, you know, the lighting is changing dramatically through the shoot, then using this can be a little bit of like troublesome, because it is very hard to adjust a lot of things on time or have that tactile feedback that you really want. So if you're shooting like especially professional work, you're gonna really feel nerve-wracking a lot of times, because it's not really giving you that confirmation or tactile feedback that you wish it would. And sometimes this, even though it's a clear plastic cover, can actually be giving this false underexposed image because of the reflection and the type of water or the type of environment you're in. The light that's casting on here or the water that's you're working with can really make your image look like it's actually underexposed. That's causing you to use maybe slower shutter speeds or higher ISOs than you actually need. So really practice and be aware of these things, and before you go into the type of water you want to shoot, things like that, just practice there first, and then you can actually probably start a shoot there, because it takes some learning curve to this, not like only from adjusting buttons, but also from getting used to how your camera behave with the back of this cover, and also how your camera behave inside this cover itself. You know, because there are cameras that will overheat. Luckily this R doesn't overheat in this bag, because it's pretty much trap air inside. Heat comes out of the camera, but it doesn't really go out of this pack itself. And if you're working in like summer, like what I'm working in right now, and you know, the water is warm during summer, so it doesn't really help the heating inside the camera itself. So also know your camera if it will be able to function in that type of temperature, or know when to stop shooting or when to give your camera a break as well if your camera is suffering from like overheating stuff as well. And another downside to this waterproof pack is this lens in here, well, this cover in front. I believe it's plastic, but you know, sometimes it's not always bad to have plastic in front of your lens, to be honest. But this plastic is weird in the way that like water dries on here very easily, leaving a lot of watermarks, and sometimes it can ruin your images a little bit if there's watermark and then you suddenly start shooting pictures. It's just, yeah, sometimes you just don't want the watermark in the, like the dry watermark in the images, and you have to spend a lot of time actually post-processing and just cutting it out. So that's what I learned in the beginning from using this pack. So really try to dry it from water so that there are no watermarks every time you take it out of the water, because it really dries on here very quickly for some reason, and it will stay on your images. But you know, that's something that's fixable in post in most cases, so depending on your workflow you might not really need to worry about that. But otherwise, if you spend time practicing with this waterproof pack or learning the learning curve of using it, I think you'll be happy using it, or at least satisfied using it, because at the end of the day it's only 60 euros. It's not very expensive, and if it's going to keep your camera dry, and if you just want to do some like a few paid shoots with it, or a few personal experiment photo shoot or video underwater shoots with it, it's really fine. It will still deliver good quality if you know its downside, its flaws, and how to work around them, that's for sure. But otherwise, if you really want perfect control of your camera underwater, and if you're always on a time sensitive photo shoot or video shoots or what have you, this case is not for you. This requires a lot of learning curve to get used to it and to let it deliver what you really want whether it's really high expectation, like personal work or professional work. And keep in mind that it's also hard for the camera to actually operate underwater because it's not really meant to be submerged underwater just because you have a waterproof housing or waterproof case on it, because depending on the water, it can really mess up the autofocusing system of the camera. For example, the water at the lake where I usually take this camera to shoot really always messes up the focusing system of my camera, regardless of the cameras I have in here, whether it's the R, the 5D line of cameras, the 1DX, things like that. I don't really recommend putting a 1DX in here because you have to actually open this, and I like to only access from here. Otherwise, I don't know, having one access point gives you less room for error for like any leakage, because if I don't tie this like tight enough, then, well, screw it tight enough, then, you know, water could actually get in from there. But anyway, it really messes up your camera's ability or features to do certain things underwater because they're not really designed to always shoot underwater. So yeah, just keep that in mind. And also this plastic element here in front of the lens doesn't really help the lens to really focus that well underwater either. Sometimes it can be a little bit reflective depending on the lighting condition that you're working with underwater, the time of the day, and the type of water you're at. So yeah, just keep that in mind as well. But otherwise, I think for 60 euros, I would still recommend getting this if your work is not too serious and you're willing to put the time into the learning curve, learning about this waterproof pack, how to use it, its essentials, things like that. You will still be able to get really nice results out of it. Granted, you have patience for things and you're willing to, you know, accept that there will be some bad results coming out of it as well, because this is not a perfect pack, and cameras will, like, regardless of the camera you will have in here, it will end up moving around a little bit inside. So yeah, just to keep that in mind. And let's say if you're taking like breaks between underwater shoots just to come up and review your images, it's still best to get your camera out of the pack anyway, simply because looking through this, even off water, like above water, would still be a little bit weird to judge the images, because this plastic thing is just really there to judge your composition, but don't judge your saturation, colors, exposures from it. So yeah. But I also recommend using some sort of like weather sealed gear in here, like, you know, professional or semi-professional cameras that are usually weather sealed with weather sealed lenses, because assuming even like if you sealed everything completely, and if you, like, suddenly there's a leakage during the shoot, whether it's been through, like, certain pressure, or it got scratched and there's holes or something, or one of the seals break, your gear has a higher chance of surviving that leakage more than if your gear isn't weather sealed. So it's always nicer to have a nice weather sealed gear in here, in my opinion. And my last point is actually these finger slots right here. I don't know how you call it. Inserts, I guess. It's still like, it cannot really zoom a lot, and I wouldn't recommend using it for like manual focusing, because you will not really be able to accurately manual focus just using this, looking through this plastic transparent cover. Just don't use it that way. But for zooming purposes, it will get your job done. If you have really nice smooth zoom lens or zoom ring anyway, then it will get the job done. But you can only do it in smaller increments, so just, yeah, take it for what it is. But otherwise, I highly recommend this pack, because yes, there are some learning curves to it, but you will still be able to get really nice results out of it if you're patient with it enough. And, you know, for 60 or 70 euros, could be cheaper or more expensive depending on where you live and the time of the year you buy it. It really is affordable, and you know, it's something that you can really experiment a lot underwater and see if you really like shooting underwater. If you do, maybe that's a path that you want to go, and you can actually like invest in a more expensive or a proper housing for your camera and then just really go that route. It's kind of like a gateway into underwater photography or shoots or filmmaking, whatever you want to call it, really. So yeah, I think it's still a nice experiment case to really get it. Or if you're just going on holidays, it's still nice to have this waterproof pack, in my opinion. Anyway, if you need a free photography guidebook, it's linked down in the description below. It's absolutely for free. You don't need to send me your email address. You don't need to submit anything. It's just click and download. Otherwise, thank you very, very much for watching. Stay safe. Have fun shooting. Bye.